I was staring out the window of my Manhattan apartment when my phone lit up. The city was buzzing beneath me, headlights threading through the streets, but my chest was heavy, almost suffocating. The text on the screen was short, blunt, almost cruel in its simplicity. The will has been read. I knew what it meant before I even opened the message. My father's voice echoed in my memory, sharp and cold. "You're not my daughter. Not anymore." It's funny how words can slice deeper than any blade. I remember the silk of my blouse clinging to my skin, damp from the sweat of holding myself together, as though if I stayed composed on the outside, the inside wouldn't crumble. My nails tapped against the glass table, rhythmic, like I was keeping time with a clock only I could hear. A part of me wanted to laugh, bitterly. My father had wealth, more than most people could dream of. A legacy. And yet, with all his money and power, he used it not to build bridges, but to burn them. When the lawyer's voice confirmed it, that I had been cut out, erased, discarded, it didn't sting as much as I thought it would. Because what no one knew, not even him, was that my life had already been rebuilt. Quietly. Independently. But the number that followed made me freeze. $3.5 million. A gift, they called it. My name attached. His final offering. I looked at the document, and without hesitation, I tore it in half. I was 19 the night my world cracked open. The house smelled of polished wood and bourbon, the kind of scent that clung to old money and older grudges. My father, Charles Whitman, stood in his study beneath shelves of leather-bound books, his tie loosened, his face hard as stone. I remember clutching the banister outside his office, my palms sweaty, praying he'd hear me out. "Dad, please," I said, my voice trembling despite my best effort to steady it. "I don't need much. Just a little help with school. I'll pay you back." He didn't even look up at first, just flipped through a folder of papers like I was another line item he could dismiss. When his eyes finally met mine, they were cold, detached. "You're not my daughter, Emily," he said flatly. "You're your mother's mistake. Don't expect a cent from me." The words hollowed me out. My throat tightened until I could barely swallow. My hands shook, my nails digging crescent moons into my palms as I tried not to cry in front of him. My mother had died when I was 12, leaving me with fragments of warmth in a house that had none. She'd given me a silver locket with her initials engraved inside, a simple oval pendant that rested against my collarbone like a lifeline. That night, I gripped it so tightly the edges pressed into my skin. "You'll regret this," I whispered, though my voice broke halfway through. He laughed, short, cruel, dismissive. That was the last night I ever called that house my home. I left with one duffel bag and the locket my mother gave me. The chill of the night air bit at my cheeks as I walked down the long driveway, tears blurring the rows of manicured hedges. Every step away from that mansion felt both terrifying and liberating. I didn't know where I was going, or how I'd pay for rent, or what I'd eat the next day. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay where I wasn't wanted. As the city skyline came into view on the horizon, I pressed the locket against my chest and made myself a silent promise. If he believed I wasn't his daughter, then fine. I'd carve out a life so bright, so undeniable, that one day he'd choke on his words. The first year away from home nearly broke me. I crashed on a friend's couch in Brooklyn, juggling 3 part-time jobs, waitressing at night, tutoring kids in the afternoons, and stocking shelves at a corner store on weekends. My body ached, my eyes burned from exhaustion, but there was something alive in me that hadn't been there before, the fire of survival. The locket never left my neck. When I felt like giving up, I'd touch the cool metal and imagine my mother whispering, "Keep going, Emily. You're stronger than this." One afternoon, I stumbled into a community college career fair just for the free coffee and snacks. That's when I met Diane Foster, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confidence that filled a room. She asked what I wanted to do with my life. I laughed nervously and said, "I just want to pay rent." But Diane didn't smile. She handed me her card and said, "Come by my office. You have more potential than you realize." Diane ran a small but ambitious marketing firm. She saw something in me I couldn't yet see in myself. She gave me unpaid intern work at first, running errands, organizing files, learning how campaigns were built. I was hungry, determined. At night, I studied design software tutorials on YouTube, practicing until my fingers cramped. The first time one of my ad designs landed a real client, I felt like I had discovered oxygen after years of suffocating. Diane noticed. Soon, she started assigning me bigger projects. Some nights, I stayed in the office until sunrise, my eyes gritty, my hands trembling from too much cheap coffee. But the exhaustion didn't scare me anymore. What scared me was the thought of going back to nothing. Slowly, small wins turned into bigger ones. A boutique clothing line loved my campaign so much they doubled their contract. A tech startup saw my work and offered me a retainer. Each check felt like proof that I could exist in this world without my father's name, without his approval, without his money. I kept my success quiet. When old acquaintances asked how I was doing, I said, "Oh, just working, staying busy." I never mentioned the clients, the growing savings account, the way my name was beginning to carry weight in certain circles. Social media? Minimal updates. No flashy posts. Just enough to seem ordinary. By 27, I had saved enough to rent my own office space in Lower Manhattan. White walls, tall windows, a single desk, and a dream. I called it Whitman Creative, not because I wanted to honor my father, but because I wanted to reclaim the name he tried to strip from me. Diane smiled when she saw the sign on the door. "I knew you'd build something," she said. I swallowed hard, touched the locket at my throat, and whispered back, "So did I." It was a Thursday morning when I got the call. "Emily, your family, they're coming to the office." My assistant's voice trembled slightly. She didn't know the full story, but she had seen the tension in my face whenever the name Whitman appeared. I smoothed the silk of my navy blouse, straightened my pearl earrings, and looked around my office. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the edges of the abstract painting I'd bought at a local gallery. Shelves lined with marketing awards gleamed against the mahogany wall. A fresh bouquet of lilies filled the air with a sweet, clean scent. Every inch of the space reflected the years of grit and sacrifice it had taken to get here. When the door opened, I didn't rise. I stayed seated at my glass desk, fountain pen in hand, finishing the signature on a contract worth more than my father's yearly salary. They entered together, my father Charles, my half-brother Ryan, and his wife. Charles still carried himself like a king, chin high, tailored suit pressed to perfection. But there was something hollow in his eyes, a fragility I'd never seen before. Ryan, smug as ever, scanned the room with disbelief. "Emily," my father said, his voice softer than I remembered. "We didn't expect this." I leaned back in my chair, crossing one leg over the other. "What exactly did you expect? A tiny cubicle? Maybe a part-time gig at a diner?" Ryan snorted. "We just didn't think you were capable of this." I smiled, slow and deliberate. That's the thing about underestimating people. One day you walk into their office, and suddenly the story you've been telling yourself doesn't fit anymore. Silence pressed into the room. My father's gaze darted around, at the framed client photos, the plaques, the custom oak conference table. Finally, his eyes landed back on me. "The will," he began cautiously, "you tore up a gift most people would kill for." I set my pen down, the click echoing. $3.5 million? Yes, I tore it up. Because it wasn't a gift. It was hush money. A final attempt to remind me I wasn't wanted. His jaw tightened. For the first time, he didn't look powerful. He looked small. "Emily," he said, almost pleading now. "You have to understand I was wrong. I see that now." I tilted my head, studying him like he was one of the market reports I dissected daily. "Do you? Or do you just see that I don't need you anymore?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "So, what? You're rich now? Big deal. You'll never be part of this family again." I laughed, a clear, unshaken sound. "You think I want that?" Ryan looked around. "This is my family now. The people I built this with. The clients who trust me. The woman who believed in me when your father called me a mistake." I gestured toward the door, where Diane had just appeared. She stood tall, her presence commanding as always, her pride in me practically radiating. Charles's face crumpled just slightly, like the weight of years pressed down on him at once. "Emily," he whispered, "I only ever wanted to protect the Whitman legacy." I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "And I've done more for the Whitman name than you ever could. You tried to erase me. But here I am, stronger, wealthier, freer than you'll ever be. And the best part? I did it without you." The room was still, charged, as the truth settled over them. My father swallowed hard, his eyes wet. For the first time in my life, he looked ashamed. I let the silence linger until it was heavy enough to crush the arrogance out of them. Then I stood, smoothing my skirt, and walked slowly around the desk. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor, each step deliberate. "You came here thinking you'd find a broken girl begging for scraps," I said softly, my eyes cutting to Ryan, who immediately shifted under my gaze. "Instead, you found the woman who built something you can't touch." Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "No. You don't get to speak until I'm done." My father's brows knit together, his voice low. "Emily, please." "Please what?" I asked sharply. "Please forget the years you reminded me I wasn't your daughter? Please pretend you didn't throw me out when I was 19 with nothing but a bag and a locket? You think money can erase that?" His mouth closed. He had no answer. I took a breath, letting the edge soften just slightly. "Here's the truth. I don't need anything from you. But you came here because you need something from me, and I'm willing to consider it on my terms." Ryan scoffed, but his wife's hand gripped his arm, silencing him. My father's face looked carved from stone, but I saw the flicker of desperation in his eyes. "My conditions are simple," I continued, my voice even. "Ryan, if you want to live under the Whitman name, you start working for it. No more handouts. You go back to school, finish a degree, build a career that isn't funded by Dad's checkbook. If you can't do that, the trust dries up." Ryan's face flushed red. "You can't." "Oh, but I can," I interrupted. "You see, Father signed over controlling shares of the Whitman Foundation to me years ago, hoping I'd never notice the fine print. I noticed." Shock spread across both their faces. My father's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He knew I was telling the truth. I turned to him. "As for you, Charles, you want me back in the family legacy? Fine. But you admit, publicly, that you were wrong. You acknowledge me as your daughter. Not for the money, not for appearances, but because I am, and because I've earned more than your respect." His lips parted, trembling slightly. For a man who had spent his life commanding boardrooms, those words seemed to choke him. "And one more thing," I added softer now. "You stop poisoning people with your bitterness. You treat your son, your employees, even your so-called friends with respect. Otherwise, you'll live the rest of your days with nothing but your guilt." I let my gaze sweep across them both, steady, unwavering. "Those are my terms. Not open for negotiation." The room was still again, the kind of stillness that comes before a storm breaks. My father's shoulders sagged. Ryan looked like he wanted to explode, and I stood there, calm, composed, untouchable. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just reacting to their power anymore. I had taken it, and I wasn't giving it back. The days that followed felt surreal. Ryan fought, of course. He stormed out of my office, swearing he'd never bow to me. But within weeks, word spread that his trust fund payments had been temporarily frozen. It didn't take long before his pride gave way to reality. He enrolled in night classes, grumbling the whole way, but it was the first real step he'd ever taken toward independence. My father, he changed in smaller, quieter ways. At first, he sent short emails, one-line updates. "Attended the Foundation's meeting today. Impressive work on the literacy program." Then came the phone calls, tentative and awkward. He stumbled over apologies, his voice cracking when he admitted, "I thought cutting you out would make me stronger. It only made me lonely." I didn't forgive him overnight. Some wounds don't vanish just because the person who caused them finally admits they exist. But slowly I saw him trying. And sometimes trying matters. One evening, I found myself standing on the balcony of my apartment, the city glittering below me. I reached up and touched the silver locket at my throat. The metal was worn smooth now, years of holding it pressed into its surface. I opened it, gazed at my mother's initials, and smiled. She had told me once, "You'll have to be your own anchor, Emily. People will fail you, but you cannot fail yourself." She was right. I had taken pain and rejection and turned them into something unshakable. I had built a life no one could take from me. And while part of me still longed for the unconditional love I never got, the stronger part, the wiser part, knew that I had already given myself the love I needed. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing outside my family, desperate to be let in. I felt like I was standing firmly in my own story, one I had written myself. I snapped the locket shut, inhaled the cool night air, and whispered into the darkness, I was his daughter all along. He just couldn't see it until I showed him. And with that, I finally felt free.